Hi there, I'm Martino, and in this video I'm going to relive my adventures in Montenegro and let you guys know if it's worth visiting for a footy trip. Let's do this. After the best part of a week in Croatia with my two FC amigos Fran and Alvaro, it was time for a couple of days along the Montenegrin coastline. Frustratingly, I couldn't take in a game in Croatia. Arriving late Saturday night, I'd hoped to sample some footy before the weekend closed out, but being Easter, it was the only time this year they didn't have games on a Sunday. Brilliant. So the Zagreb derby will have to wait for another time. Tip 1. Don't ever visit Croatia at Easter. The streets are about as busy as Christmas Day in England as a huge family celebration. So, time for my 56th country. History of this nation dates back as far as the 6th century BC. Since that time it was ruled or inhabited by Greeks, Celts, Illyrians, Romans, Slavs, Serbians, Byzantines, Ottomans and, for the best part of 400 years, Venetians. During these periods, Montenegrin clans had always battled and survived in the tough terrains and as a result helped maintain some level of autonomy or independence. Named Crna Gora by the natives since the 15th century, translated literally by the Venetians to Montenegro, Black Mountains in English, it all makes sense when you see the coastal scenery, particularly once the sun disappears. During the mid to late 1800s, while across the Adriatic Sea Italy was only just becoming a unified country, Montenegro was seeking international recognition as an independent nation itself. Years of ongoing battles with the Ottomans led to eventual victory after some help from the Russians. Independence was gained and retained until the start of World War I. World War I actually started with Austria-Hungary declaring war on Serbia after the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Montenegro offered their support to their neighbours, but when Serbia fell to their rivals, so did Montenegro, leaving them with yet another alternative ruler, if only for a short time until liberated by the Allies in 1918. Their ruler, King Nicholas, fled to Italy during the war, and as a result the people of Montenegro decided to join the Kingdom of Serbia on completion of World War I. They soon combined with Croats and Slovenes to form Yugoslavia, literally land of the South Slavs. Just 23 years later, Montenegro suffered further as it became an Italian protectorate as World War II proceeded. On Italy's capitulation in 1943, Germany took over occupation until again the region liberated themselves by fighting back the Germans with assistance from the USSR in 1945. At this point, Josip Broz, better known as Tito, declared Montenegro one of the 6 republics of Yugoslavia. Due to leading their own liberation, they were able to resist fully conforming to Soviet ideals. In the post-war years, Montenegro progressed as the infrastructure was rebuilt after suffering greatly during the war. The capital was moved from the historic Cetinje to the more conveniently placed and ever-expanding Podgorica. The city took on a new name, Titograd, after the popular Yugoslav leader. Following Tito's death and the breakup of Yugoslavia, further war ensued in the Balkans in the early 90s. Montenegro again allied with Serbia under Slobodan Milosevic's rule and assisted with substantial missile attacks on Croatia's walled city of Dubrovnik, as well as the arresting and deportation of Bosnian refugees. After Croatia, Slovenia, Macedonia and finally Bosnia declared independence, the former Yugoslavia was left to just Serbia and Montenegro. However, some 15 years later, Montenegro was again an independent state in 2006 after 55% of voters backed the motion. Over to the football, and sometimes it looks like the fixture gods have smiled upon you. As I was arriving to Kotor from Dubrovnik, there seemed a couple of good options. FK Petrovac further down the Adriatic coastline ended up being a little too far for the day trip logistically, but also FK Otrant in the Bay of Kotor region. On mentioning Montenegro as a destination, the first response was always, Kotor is stunning. Beautiful scenery, lovely weather and the chance of a top-flight footy match. What more could one ask for? Now, for some reason, the Montenegrin League doesn't release kick-off times until the week before, but when they did, all seemed to fit perfectly. One of Montenegro's oldest clubs, FK Arsenal Tivat, flying high in 3rd position and chasing European football, was set to kick off at 4 o'clock, giving me ample time to hike the 6-hour trek from Kotor over the Vermak Ridge with incredible views of the whole bay before settling down to watch the match. A quick message to the club's Instagram page to confirm early discussions about paying on the gate, and not the response I was hoping for. Correct, just turn up on the day. Oh, but by the way, just to let you know, we're playing in the capital Podgorica as our home ground is undergoing maintenance. Are you fucking serious? The whole weekend revolved around this game, so all plans were immediately screwed. Missing out on watching a team whose only non-Montenegrin player was called Montenegro was a sad moment for me. The heavy rain and empty streets had me cursing my luck. After kicking a few cats to release some stress, I calmed down, regrouped and reverted back to the SofaScore to check out the 2nd division. Further frustration to find a local team, FK Bokељ Котор, were playing just hours before my flight back home the next day. Not enough time to make my bus to Podgorica. Next on the list, 4th place FK Podgerica. After a nightmare week of fixtures, I finally found a game to match my schedule. Now I had a plan, time to relax and enjoy the town of Kotor. In such a picturesque area with a deep history, it's more than enough to simply wander around and enjoy the beautiful vibes. A nice walking tour to get some background info on the town is always a great way to start off in any new location. Kotor is a beautiful town on the Montenegrin coastline. Its centrepiece is the fortified Old Town, a stunning UNESCO World Heritage Site which draws over 250,000 tourists each year, predominantly via cruise ships. As well as the tourist, it's famed for its love of cats. They roam the streets freely and are fed and cared for by the community and charities rather than a specific owner. Quite charming, really. If you like cats, that is. The Old Town was constructed by the Venetians during their reign there, and to this day there is still a noticeable Italian influence, including parts of the local dialect. No surprise, given that the main language here was a form of Italian until the 18th century before succumbing to Serbo-Croat, which is the language spoken predominantly within the Balkan region. Montenegro uses both the Cyrillic and Latin alphabets, however the language itself is more natural to the Cyrillic, hence the sheer number of accents and symbols on the Latin letters to convert them into the sounds of the Cyrillic alphabet. One beauty of this region is the dark mountain peaks along the coastline that give the country its name. It's possible to take the 11-kilometre hike from Kotor to Tivat along the Vermak Ridge as I originally planned. This takes you up to the old Austro-Hungarian fortress which provided lookout across the whole bay during their occupation of Montenegro. Though the Austrians are long gone, the stunning views remained, making a beautiful vantage point to appreciate some of the most impressive vistas in the Balkans. From here you will also likely see people setting off on the boat trip to the Blue Cave, up to Dubrovnik for the day as well as other destinations around the bay. However, if the marathon hike is not to your liking, then there's also a 15-minute bus/taxi alternative to get you around to Tivat. Tivat itself is a rather affluent area with Porto Montenegro attracting super yachts to the region. As expected, this brings expensive restaurants and high-end shops, so maybe best eating before you get there. Tivat is also home to the Maritime Heritage Museum, which will shed light on the history from which FK Arsenal bore their name. Less famous than its neighbour Kotor, both towns are well worth a visit if time permits. With no match to watch on the Saturday, I took the less strenuous hike up Mount Lovćen, the scene of many battles during the Great War. This is now an incredibly peaceful spot looking over the Bay of Kotor. A hike well worth taking on, you'll be up and down within a few hours. Whilst up here, I spotted the Stadion Podgerica, home to second-tier FK Bokељ Котор. I saw a little bit of movement and I thought I'd take a look on my return. Right on cue. I arrived 10 minutes before the under-18s top division clash between Bokељ and FK Jedinstvo kicked off. Although only played on the adjacent 4G pitch, it was still a lovely spot to take in some football. Barring a couple of players, the standard didn't suggest that Montenegro was about to make any moves in the footballing world anytime soon, as Jedinstvo cruised to a 5-1 victory before embarking on the 5-hour journey home. The evening was spent in a lovely local pub sampling the local beer of Nikšićko, watching Man City convincingly dispatch Leicester in their relentless pursuit of the original ask. A couple of hours passed conversing with an old American fella professing his love for the country before calling my time on Kotor. Up next, Podgorica, 2.5 hours on the bus via the popular beach town of Budvar and the former capital Cetinje. Finally, a fixture had fallen nicely and I set off on foot to the DG Arena. Built in 2018, it's named after the Donja Gorica suburb of Podgorica in which it lies. On arrival, I walked for an hour to try and get the briefest of feels for the city, but it would be unfair to make any personal judgments from that time. Although I must admit I didn't see or feel anything that made me want to return. I jumped in a taxi for the last portion of the journey and arranged to meet the same guy to take me to the airport post-match. Nice little bonus. After a week of failures on the footy front, the lack of people anywhere near the stadium was not filling me with hope. But all was well. I saw the players warming up through a gap in the fence, and when asking how to enter, I was waved through via the pitch access at no cost. A rather surreal experience, as with a gate of probably around 200, charging something seemed appropriate, especially in a 4,300 capacity arena. Oh well, no complaints here. However, there was a complaint when the lack of entry requirement was equalled by the lack of any kind of refreshments. No beer or food available, which struck me as rather strange. As for the fixture itself, FK Podgerica were looking to bounce back from last season's relegation and cement their place in the promotion playoff spots. Their opposition for the day were FK Otrant Olympic. At kick-off, the team from near the Albanian border were propping up the table in the division's only relegation spot. Plenty at stake for both sides at this stage of the season. In terms of history, Podgorica only really started in 2014 after revitalising an old club that disbanded in the 70s. A speedy rise through the leagues had them playing European football last season after a 4th place finish the year before, admittedly in the lowest possible form, losing their Europa Conference League first qualifying round. It was hardly an adventure either, as they played Lazio of Albania just across the border. Unfortunately, the journey still took its toll and their fate that season was decided by defeating a relegation playoff. The volume of the pre-match intro seemed a tad out of place at such a sparsely packed stadium, but the Soviet style certainly entertained me. The match kicked off on a nice mild early evening with glimpses of sunshine occasionally lighting up the stadium. Very relaxing atmosphere, partly due to the snow-capped peaks visible in the distance, the tranquil nature of the setting and a rather low attendance. It seemed there was much more support for the away side, and even most of that seemed to come from those affiliated with the club. The game itself was thoroughly enjoyable. Both sides tried to play football, but with enough end-to-end action to make it entertaining. Otrant broke the deadlock directly from a corner and they never looked back. Some great performances and a huge desire encouraged by the travelling supporters. They fought their way to a 3-0 win to temporarily lift themselves out of the danger zone. A lovely scene at the end highlighted their team spirit and camaraderie as the fans gathered behind the players for a team photograph. With the attitude shown, I wouldn't be surprised to see them survive, and I'll be following their journey through to the end of the season. So, as always, I'll be scoring Montenegro as a footy trip out of 100 over 10 categories. Let's see what we think. Team ability. Unfortunately, the top division in Montenegro is considered better than only San Marino for its domestic game within Europe. 1 out of 10. Atmosphere. It was on Greek Orthodox Easter Sunday, but still a really poor turnout and atmosphere for this match. Only Jedinstvo averaged more than 1,000 fans per game. As a comparison, that's still less than English Tier 7. 1 out of 10. Stadium quality. Again, not a huge amount to write home about, sadly, across the country. 1 out of 10. Beer and food at the stadium. For the youth game, I understood, but for a game with a couple of hundred people, no facilities at all? 0 out of 10. Tourism. Podgorica itself doesn't offer a huge amount for tourists, but take the 2-hour drive to the Adriatic coast and you'll be greeted with some wonderful places to spend your holidays. Add to that an interesting history of the country dating back many centuries. 6 out of 10. Accessibility. Flights can be purchased cheaply if you book early enough with Ryanair. And once it's there, compared to its northern neighbour Croatia, your bank balance will take much less of a hit. 7 out of 10. People. Not too many interactions of note, but a more Eastern European feel regarding openness. Add to that a pretty poor acceptance of things like LGBT rights. Let's just say they're a little bit behind the rest of Europe. 4 out of 10. Stadium surroundings. Nothing to see on the way to FK Podgerica, but get out to the coastal games and you can't go wrong. 6 out of 10. History. Only independent since 2006. They have never had a team make it beyond any qualification round in Europe. It doesn't get too much worse. 1 out of 10. Ease, cost of ticket purchase. I must say it's very easy and cheap to get in, and so this would be a 10, if the fixture planning wasn't such a pain. Kick-off times only announced a week before. There's more organisation in the Lancashire and Cheshire League. 5 out of 10. So, overall a pretty abysmal 32 out of 100. That feels harsh, but I couldn't advise anyone to head here purely for footy. However, if ticking off countries, then the coastal teams will be much preferred. Speaking of goals, my personal accomplishments for this trip. I've now watched football in 18 countries across the world, 12 of those in Europe, and Montenegro was the 56th country I visited. Always a pleasure to tick another new country off the list and get closer to that goal of the UEFA 55. Bit by bit, one at a time. Until the next footy trip, take it easy.